Why are you suffering more when you really trust God? This question strikes at the core of our spiritual experience and challenges our understanding of God's nature and His purpose in our lives. Firstly, we must acknowledge that suffering is a universal experience. It knows no boundaries of race, culture, or creed. Even those who have placed their unwavering trust in God are not exempt from trials and tribulations. This reality can be bewildering and disheartening. However, the Bible provides profound insights into why suffering occurs and how it intersects with our faith. One of the primary reasons why we may experience intensified suffering as we deepen our trust in God is that our faith is being refined. In 1 Peter 1, 6-7, the Apostle Peter writes, "In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed." Just as gold is refined by fire to remove impurities, our faith is tested and purified through suffering. This process is not meant to break us, but to strengthen us, to draw us closer to God, and to develop a deeper, more resilient faith. It is in these moments of trial that our trust in God is truly proven and shown to be genuine. Another reason for increased suffering may be found in the concept of spiritual warfare. The Apostle Paul reminds us in Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." When we place our trust in God, we become a target for the enemy. Satan seeks to undermine our faith and destroy our relationship with God. Suffering can be a tool he uses to sow doubt and fear in our hearts. Yet, we must remember that God equips us with the armor of faith to stand firm against these attacks. In the midst of suffering, we are called to put on the full armor of God, to stand our ground, and to resist the enemy's schemes. Our suffering, therefore, becomes a battlefield where our faith is tested and where we learn to rely on God's strength rather than our own. Furthermore, suffering can be a means through which God molds us into the likeness of Christ. In Romans 8:28-29, Paul writes, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. For those God foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son." Our trials and tribulations are not meaningless. They are tools in the hands of the Master Potter, shaping and molding us to reflect the character of Jesus. Consider the life of Jesus Himself. He was the epitome of perfect trust and obedience to the Father, yet He experienced unimaginable suffering. Isaiah 53:3 describes Him as a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Jesus' suffering was not a sign of God's abandonment, but rather a testament to His profound trust and submission to God's will. Through His suffering, Jesus accomplished the greatest act of love and redemption in history. In our own lives, suffering can draw us into deeper communion with Christ. The Apostle Paul, who endured immense suffering for the sake of the gospel, wrote in Philippians 3:10, "I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of His resurrection and participation in His sufferings, becoming like Him in His death." When we suffer, we are invited to share in the sufferings of Christ, to experience a deeper fellowship with Him, and to rely on His resurrection power to sustain us. Finally, we must remember that suffering is temporary, but the glory that awaits us is eternal. In 2 Corinthians 4:17-18, Paul encourages us with these words, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Our suffering in this present life is but a fleeting moment in comparison to the eternal joy and glory that God has prepared for you. In conclusion, dear friends, suffering is not a sign of God's absence or a lack of faith. Instead, it is a profound opportunity to deepen our trust in God, to grow in Christ-likeness, and to prepare for the eternal glory that awaits us. Let us embrace our trials with faith, knowing that God is at work in us and through us, refining our faith, equipping us for spiritual battle, and drawing us into deeper communion with Christ. May we find comfort and strength in the promise that, though we suffer now, we are being prepared for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Amen. Thanks for watching. Share this video with your friends and family.